I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello, this is Christina Barney watching Black Teen News. Hello. Welcome to Black Teen News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about this TikTok video that I saw today, and it was someone who has about almost 800,000 followers, and they wanted to ask some genuine questions about why people on the right just kind of ignored or didn't believe Donald Trump's, kind of authoritative sort of messaging. And the simple answer, you're probably thinking it as I'm thinking it and about to say it. The answer to that is that we obviously look at his clips in context and know that most people are lying about him. And there's a follow-up video because people obviously said that in his comments. And he had mentioned something in his video that was out of context. And then he admitted that he actually looked up the original context of the video and still blamed Trump for using language that is coded in a way that people can interpret. And obviously he takes interpretations that are not very generous to Trump. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So I wanted to show you guys this video of this man with a lot of followers. And I don't know if I've never seen him before. He popped up on a response video from someone else that I had never seen before. So I don't know if he has a political page or not, but I appreciate him, asking the question. So hopefully we can go ahead and answer it today. I also want to talk about how they're trying to steal an election in Pennsylvania because because my sister, she mentioned, well, I've referenced it, and so mentioned the other day, she's like, they're not going to be able to change the results. Trump won. I'm like, oh no, but they're trying to steal the Senate race. They're really upset that McCormick, who ran a fabulous campaign, had fabulous ads that people were pointing to, and like, the Trump campaign needs to make ads like this. McCormick ran a flawless campaign. I don't know about flawless. Flawless is a very strong word, and I'm not in Pennsylvania. I didn't see all the ads. I just saw a lot of them that went viral that people posted or whatever. And he seemed to be doing a pretty good job. I'm going to retract the word I don't want to use flawless. People are using flawless too much. And I retract the word flawless. But he ran a good campaign as far as marketing and getting information out there that was important to the people of Pennsylvania, and showing how the Democrats, his opponent, and Kamala Harris, because he'd do videos about Bob Casey, and then he'd also tie it to Kamala Harris about fracking and other stuff. So he did a great job, and it's a well-earned W, and they cannot take it. The Democrats are upset about it, and so they decided to count ballots they weren't allowed to count. And Josh Shapiro actually went ahead and he actually said, "Oh, there's some confusion here," and and tried to just kind of, I don't know, cover for them. And it's just really unbecoming of someone who wants to be a really serious future nominee. And I'm not saying he still can't be a future nominee for the Democrats, but I just wish there was some honesty. Like, just stand up and say, hey, you guys have done something that's wrong. We need to value the rule of law, and a loss is a loss. Like, take the L. Better luck next time. There's no confusion here. And these people who are blatantly breaking the law, need to go to jail. And it's like, it's not like they didn't do it on camera because they did. They announced that they knew what they were, doing, they weren't supposed to do. So we'll talk about that and some other things. But before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost to stream and run my website, all the good stuff. So you guys can support. I appreciate you. If you guys would like to give super chats, you guys can do that. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can do stars. But the best way to support is at the website. You guys can also look at different merch that's available, like the Black Tea mug and some of this pro-life stuff here, like Roe Casey aborted, and we got this cool Frederick Douglass tea you guys can get. Oh, because Black History Month will be here before you know it. So check out that different merch. Hello to those of you in the chat, and thank you to those who will watch it back later. And I don't really have many announcements, I don't think, going on. Though I will always encourage you guys to check out my books. I have a link in the description. I'll take you to an Amazon page that'll have like all my books there and stuff. But I, still have my, of course, God is blatantly against abortion right here. Tina is in the YouTube chat. Tina is the one who drew the hand of God reaching out to the little baby hand here. So she did a great job, which, by the way, Tina is actually working on illustrations for my bigger book, which, by the way, Tina, I did see the older dinosaur, and it was looking pretty good. I just want to let you know I saw your message. And I have to just get back with you later, obviously, but I saw you in the chat. Just wanted to let you know that I saw in the messages. I was just busy, I couldn't respond, but she does a great job. You guys should check out her stuff, and I invite her to share her link to her website, and you guys can go look at her little teeny portraits, or you guys can get a bigger painting, or some of her text portraits if she's still here in the live. Go ahead, and if you want to post a link, Tina, you're more than welcome to do that. So she said thank you. I was wondering if you saw it. Yep, I saw it. I do want to say something about Trump's nominees, because I'm seeing, before we get started, I'm kind of stalling because an email that I sent to myself that had the link didn't send. I think my inbox is way too full, and it's just taking forever. So I think I have to send it some other kind of way. But I've seen Charlie Kirk and other people say online that Trump was elected, people need to pass his nominees, and if they don't vote for his nominees, then they're going to go ahead and just primary everybody. And I saw some people say this is dangerous. This is, I like Trump, but this is dangerous, and this is, he can't be a Caesar or a dictator or something like that. And I don't think Charlie saying you guys do what we want you to do, or we're going to primary you, is dangerous in a sense that our country is about to fall or something like that. I think that kind of rhetoric is a little much, because you're still talking about people engaging in the political process, but just like Trump was elected to pick a cabinet, to run a government, to head the government, and of course he's going to pick a cabinet to do that, the senators are also picked to advise and consent, right? So they're going to look through the nominees, they're going to ask some questions, they're going to look at their record, what they plan to do, ask some things that are relative to whatever organization that they'll be over, department, and they're going to vote yay or nay. And so I think that Trump has had some good picks. Of course, you have the media that keeps trying to downplay some of them. If they can just, like, so Secretary of Transportation, his nominee, like, oh, he hosts like Fox Business, like some Fox News host or something. It's like, you're not going to mention like his professional record at all, like of like being in Congress or anything like that. Like Pete Hegseth, you're not going to mention his military record or his Ivy League training or anything like that. You only want to, not training, but degrees. You're not going to mention any of that. You only want to mention that he's a Fox News host, not all of his advocacy for veterans and other stuff like that, and he really wants to get a lot of the woke stuff out of the military, and you have people bracing for that, being upset about that, and Melissa Slock and other people saying, oh, you're gonna make it too political if you get all this like white rage and nonsense that's been going on out of the military. No, the military is supposed to be a killing force that is supposed to advance, and the interest of the US and protect the US and so on. So it's not about all this other woke garbage that they're putting in there. So there's some really great nominees, interesting nominees, maybe not traditional nominees, but that doesn't mean that they won't be good nominees, but they will be questioned. And if the senators, think that they are good, then they're going to go ahead and put them through. And then there's some more controversial picks, like Matt Gaetz is a controversial pick. Now, there's all the stuff floating around about the allegations with him sleeping with women and underage girls and all this other kind of stuff. And some of that sounds super fishy. And I thought it always sounded super fishy. I haven't seen the evidence or whatever. But I do know that they've hated Matt for a long time. Okay. So I'm just telling you what makes sense to me. This isn't me. Again, this isn't me looking at the evidence. This just kind of makes sense to my mind. I'm not saying he did or didn't do anything, but he definitely is innocent until proven otherwise, right? I just can't imagine with him being a thorn in everyone's side on the right and the left, and him mouthing off about the DOJ and the Biden administration for so long. I cannot imagine that if he actually did anything that was criminal, that he'd be still sitting there, which he did just resign, but in Congress. I can't imagine that. I can't. That seems really strange to me. It doesn't make sense in this world. So, I think it is more likely that there probably isn't any there. There might be maybe some bad behavior or whatever that might embarrass him or whatever if that House report comes out. I don't know, ethics report, but the idea that there's got to be something nefarious going on, I just again, it's just kind of hard to imagine that that's the case with him. Now, I also think that though he has great moments that a lot of people are sharing and whatever in the House, going after, the deep state and so on, and people are like, this is why people don't like Matt. Matt is a bit of a show off for the Twitterverse at times, and he comes off so terribly unserious. The whole let's blow up the speakership situation without like having a backup, like that kind of nonsense plot and stuff was so tiring. And so I can see why a lot of folks don't like him too much. And I read something, well, there's different rumors and stuff from all over the place that there was at least 30 senators maybe that were thinking about saying no. From my understanding, I saw a rumor that Trump was like kind of backing off, but then I saw there was reports last night that Trump was calling himself and whipping votes for Matt. So they're going to try to push him through. And I don't know what people are going to do because they only need a couple people to say no. I don't imagine any Democrats are going to vote for him, but they only need a couple Republicans to not say yes. And I think there's a lot of people who have more qualifications. And you could say like, oh, the Democrats, they nominate people who aren't qualified all the time. Gaetz doesn't even have like that much qualifications in the realm of like the law to be like AG. Now, one thing people are saying is if you voted for Merrick Garland, but you won't vote for Gaetz, then you need to be primaried. And I don't even think that is going to, I think some of those people in that sphere would be retiring and not up for election anytime soon. So I don't think those threats are going to really move people like that. But I definitely didn't like Garland. I didn't want to be the on the Supreme Court. Thank God he's not. I don't imagine that anyone who may have voted for him knew that he was going to be as bad as what he was. Oh my God. I didn't expect that he was going to be as bad and biased and just awful as he was or as he is. But you know, what in a sane world, people would nominate people who can do the job, who have some experience with the job. I'm talking about the right and the left. And you may have different ideological ideas, but if they're qualified, maybe you're going to go ahead and vote for them. And that was kind of the understanding with like Supreme Court picks or whatever, until the whole Borking incident, which was, done by Biden and other folks. Biden, the Bork, and they tried to derail Clarence Thomas with nonsense. They tried to derail Brett Kavanaugh with nonsense. And I'm sure they'll try to derail other people with nonsense too. And it's just so one-sided and partisan and stuff. So I don't expect the Democrats to come over and support Gates, but I'm definitely would not be surprised if Gates didn't make it through. I had mentioned that I'm not too fond of the pick for HHS, which would be Kennedy. And I did not go into a big rant about it. I just mentioned I don't want someone who's that pro-abortion to be over HHS. And if there's time, I will rant about it today. I will rant about it some point this week. I know some you guys like my rants. But we'll wait a little bit for that. And we'll wait a little bit for that. So Tina, I'm sending you a message. You don't have to look at it, but I just needed it to be in my inbox on Twitter. So anyway, it is their job to look at the nominees and to assess them, and they have a say. People voted for them just like people voted for Trump, and everybody's going to do their job. Trump doesn't just get to run shot over everyone. And by the way, Trump, if you guys recall Trump's first term, Trump's first instinct isn't always the good thing. Like when they had a conversation, I'm assuming this is after some kind of incident. I can't remember, but they were having a conversation and Mike about firearms and taking them away or whatever. And Mike Pence is like, we got to make sure that there's due process. And Donald Trump said, I like taking the guns and then due process. Of course, it's a horrible statement. Of course, it's a horrible statement. Now, Trump didn't act on that or whatever. There wasn't some kind of national, like, universal background check or universal red flag law or whatever that he signed and passed or whatever. But that initial reaction and instinct wasn't great. And so other people come around and they have conversations. He listens. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. But the first thing that he blurts, like I learned within his administration, that if he says something that I disagree with, and my first instinct is not going to be like, oh, let me just be so upset about this. I'm like, I'm going to give him some time. I'm going to give him some time because I think he's going to walk that back. And usually he'll walk it back. So I think it won't be the end of the world if some don't get through. Like I think Clinton had like an AG. He had to, from my understanding, which I wasn't paying attention to politics too much back then, but that he had to have like several tries. So not everybody gets their full slate in. It's not the end of the world if somebody doesn't make it through or somebody needs to be replaced or whatever. And we'll go from there. Is that my only reason for not supporting Kennedy? No, I mean, I think to me kind of comes off a little bit too radical on a lot of different things. I just don't know how and I know it eased up a lot from when he was running as an independent for president, but I don't like some of his instincts and things that he said in the past, and I worry about his. I imagine that he will be on good behavior, and he can't just go run shot just crazy with government regulation because of the administration that he's going to be in. So I don't know how much he's going to be dialed back, but I think his instinct is more regulation and stuff. So I you know, like stuff that I know guns isn't related to what would be going on in his purview or whatever, but like stuff he said about guns and environmentalist stuff, it's just he there's things that he's done that gives me the ick. I guess. And again, I know he's like really moderated a lot or tried to walk back stuff and not have that kind of nature while he was running as an independent, but I didn't forget, or at least I could see clips from different situations in the past. So we'll, we'll see if I can get to that. We'll see if I can have those conversations today. I don't know if I'll have the time. But anyway, let's move on. I just brought it to say, some of these senators I don't like. And they're going to be jerks about it, and maybe too strict. And if they have standards that are beyond the standards that they showed to like the Biden administration, like the Biden administration right now has people running the country that are just absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Like our assistant health secretary is a trans woman who, I've mentioned this quite a few times, but was in Pennsylvania and got his mom out of a nursing home facility because obviously they knew it was a bad idea to mix nursing home patients with COVID patients. And, that was one state where they decided to have that and didn't lead to good things, obviously. And that was a person who failed upwards, probably because of the diversity hire of him being a trans person. And they wanted to have a trans person in the administration. But even still, he has more experience than the current person who's his higher up, who's the actual health secretary, because he doesn't have any background in that at all. And so people pretending like, oh, all these people are so unqualified when they were championing Biden's DEI picks. Now his picks are Biden's picks, a lot of them were DEI. Trump's picks are specific to disrupting a system. Like Tulsi Gabbard, she was she was a victim of the system. So she's turning it back. It's like turning it back on them. Like you abused your power. Now I'm going to set it straight. Matt Gaetz, it's like, you guys abused your power against Trump and other folks. We're going to turn it back. And he was a big advocate against the Russia hoax, as Trump will call it, and so on. So that's turning it back. RFK, like he didn't like all the locked mandates or whatever and so on. And so it's like turning it back. They did all this stuff. We're turning it back, like about free speech, about what we put in our bodies and transparency and all the stuff. We're turning it back. We're flipping it on its head. Pete Hegseth. Oh, you guys like all this woke stuff in the military and stuff? No, we're supposed to be a killing force. Like that's what we're going to focus on. We're turning it back. So Trump's picks are not. There's a loyalty aspect to it too. They all serve under the pleasure of the president, so they should be, looking toward how they can successfully implement the vision and the mandate that the people set when they elected Donald Trump. He made his pitch, mass deportations, all that stuff, and people checked yes on him rather than on Kamala. So Kamala, yeah. So yeah, he's gonna pick people who are going to do a job and serve that vision going forward, and not people who aren't going to try to kneecap him, or if maybe he doesn't have the best idea in the world, like try like have a conversation and maybe get on track to something that is beneficial for the American people, but still keep with that America First agenda. So he has reasons for the people that he's picking. It's not all coin flip stuff. So as far as like a unifying, more competent reason for why he's doing what he's doing, his picks are going to be better than, of course, Biden's picks. Like the pick who's the energy secretary, she's the former governor of Michigan, Jennifer Granholm. That time period for which she was the governor, we call it the lost decade. So I think it's hilarious in a, oh my gosh, that's awful kind of way. Sometimes you got to laugh so you won't cry. That she failed upwards into that position. And it's interesting, that energy prices for people are just killing them. They're killing them. And when people talk about energy and so on, and some of the boneheaded policies that we have going on, I just kind of chuckle and say, hey, did you know that this is the governor over the lost decade of Michigan? That's what we call it. And their eyes just buck and they seem so distressed. Now, I'm sure a lot of Democrats don't call it that, but that's what it's known as, especially in Republican circles. That's what they successfully branded it as, the lost decade. So anyway, let's hop to it. Let's hop to the video I wanted. So this guy on TikTok, I don't know if he has a political account. This first time I've seen him stuff, so I apologize for, I don't know if you're a fan. I've just never seen his stuff before. But he's asking this question to Trump supporters, and the video I saw was very respectful responding to him. So I went to the original and I just thought about responding to him myself. So I just decided to do it with you guys. And in watching his video, something else pretty interesting popped up as far as his response, because lots of people left comments that were pretty obvious comments. But he said something in this video that just shows that the Trump derangement is just like clutching on to him. And even his response to something that a comment that someone left is still clutching on to the Trump derangement syndrome. So we're going to see if there's a way to fight beyond this, and hopefully people like him can be cured. So here we go.
If you voted for Donald Trump, I would honestly love to hear your perspective on something. And I promise I'm not trying to set up a trap to go after people. If you're willing to provide your perspective, I will be incredibly respectful as anyone is willing to be to have this conversation. And I don't want people fighting in the comments, but obviously from our perspective, we feel like we have heard a lot of authoritarian rhetoric from Donald Trump, and that is scary. And I understand that for a lot of people, especially on the right, they don't think that those are credible threats. And that's what I want to understand. I'm not looking for people to flood my comments with the left has been fear-mongering. I understand people feel that way. What I'm trying to understand is why? Why do people think that this is not a credible threat? I want to understand what it is that goes through your head when you hear him talk about things like lining someone up in front of a firing squad, or the enemy within that needs to be eradicated, or removing checks and balances against his power. Are you thinking, well, he just says crazy shit to get people out to vote, he's not actually going to do it? Or I think he'll be good for the economy, so I'm willing to take the risk? Or even if we move towards Christian nationalism in some regard, that's not that concerning to me, because I think Christianity is something we should be striving for. It's something I haven't even thought of. Honestly, I would love to hear your perspective. I would love to hear what you have to say to ease my anxiety, for one, but also I think these are conversations we should be having. We should be doing better at this. So again, please be respectful, especially people on the left. Like, I want to hear this. I want to have this conversation. And if you're willing to provide this information, I would love to hear it.
Okay, so I'm sure you guys have thoughts. I thought it was interesting that he said, I don't want to hear just things like the Democrats are fear-mongering, they're fear-mongering, they're fear-mongering. And then he went into like some fear-mongering sort of rhetoric, right? About lining people up in firing squads and so on. And someone mentions that, like, hey, you should look at the original clip, and we'll get to that response that he said there. But people did leave. Most of the comments that I saw were pretty respectful. Let me go back a little bit.
If you voted for Donald Trump, I would honestly.
Or hold on, let me.
If you voted for Donald Trump, I would.
let's just watch it again.
Honestly,
it's
love
not
to
that
hear
long.
your perspective on something. And I promise I'm not trying to set up a trap to go after people. If you're willing to provide your perspective, I will be incredibly respectful as anyone is willing to be to have this conversation. And I don't want people fighting in the comments, but obviously from our perspective, we feel like we have heard a lot of authoritarian rhetoric from Donald Trump. And that is,
Yes, from your perspective, but you could be wrong, right? And he participated in the rhetoric that leads to people being deranged, having the Trump derangement syndrome. So you can see this loop here of just misinformation that continues to build the fear.
that is scary. And I understand that for a lot of people, especially on the right, they don't think that those are credible threats.
And it's not credible because it's fiction. It's stuff that's taken out of context. It's stuff that people push things that weren't even his policy. Trump would say something that was his policy that people just wouldn't believe it, or people would say he's lying or just ignore it or whatever. Like the whole entire Kamala Harris campaign was run on lies and gaslighting and straw manning. Like Donald Trump, like I mentioned how McCormick had really, really good ads against Bob Casey, because he would talk about Bob Casey. He would talk about Bob Casey, and he would also talk about Kamala Harris, and he would tie them together. But he would show clips of Kamala Harris saying one thing, like with banning fracking. There's no question I'm gonna ban fracking, and I'm gonna ban fossil fuels and all that stuff. And people of Pennsylvania obviously cared about those sorts of things. So and those were things in context. Like I made a 50 reasons not to vote for Kamala Harris. Everything I said about her were things in context, things that she said, voted on, or whatever, things that were genuinely true, not little snippets that Kamala Harris HQ put up. And even websites like CNN admitted, like, hey, Kamala Harris HQ, they're a bunch of liars. Like they've really pushed a lot of stuff on misinformation. So yeah, the reason why we're not concerned is because a lot of things that they claim that they're concerned about aren't even true, aren't even real. A lot of the I did a video about the top 10 Trump hoaxes. A lot of things that people believe that Trump said or did that made him so terrible are things that aren't even true. So if you haven't seen that video or my 50 reasons video, I encourage you guys to check it out. But yeah, a lot of that's what a lot of people are saying. Like a lot of the stuff you guys are concerned about isn't even true. And another thing that people said in the comments, which is probably occurred to you all too, we've already experienced 4 years of Trump. We've already experienced 4 years of Trump already. So when people say things like, oh, he's going to do this, or he's going to be a threat to democracy, and he's going to ruin the country, and like, okay, well, we experienced him. And you're like, oh, he's going to be a dictator. Well, during COVID, was he a dictator? Like they locked down the country, but it was like, here are our recommendations, and states started locking down. Granted, some states, when they started opening back up, Trump was like pressuring them because he didn't want the media to say bad things about him or whatever. So he wasn't perfect and stuff, but it wasn't like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris where they're like, you are going to take this jab, we are losing patience with you. This isn't about your freedom or your personal choice. And I'm quoting him, by the way, that those are the things that Biden actually said to the American people. They said they did the unconstitutional OSHA mandates. They were successful in their mandates against healthcare providers because they got government money. The FYI, be careful about how much you intertwine with the government, because then they can control you. They were threatening like government contracts if your people don't get vaccinated and stuff. I heard Riley Gaines, you guys know Riley Gaines, a swimmer who has really stood up for women's rights and their sports. And I did interview her some time ago. It's been over a year, but I saw a TikTok with her today, and she married a man who is an immigrant from Europe. They met in college. He's an athlete. And so he's still not a citizen, even though they've been married for 2 years. And she talked about how, long of a process it can be. And I thought the video at first was going to be talking about immigration and why, you know, it matters to go in the right way. And there's so many people who's doing things the right way, and it still takes a long time. And we have to get better with this system, but we can't have an open border. That's where I thought the video was going. But Riley Gaines like showed a paper that she got that was supposed to be, that they're supposed to like show evidence that he's been vaccinated. And specifically, they wanted to make sure he'd been vaccinated with the COVID shots. So they're just like, why the COVID shots? Like polio and stuff like that, sure, but the COVID shots, because they're not making sure that everyone coming up from the southern border got their shots and their boosters. So she's like, they can come up from the country, up to the country without being vaccinated. But if you want to be a legal resident and immigrate into the country, they want to make sure that you got all those COVID shots. So I was amazed. I'm gonna have to see if I can get Riley back on the show, but I was just wow. And so she's like, we can wait a little bit longer for his immigration to get worked out, and he doesn't have a green card, she said. And so you know, she says it's important that he keeps his health and he doesn't, you know, inject himself with that stuff that he doesn't need to inject himself with. And I hope things will change once Trump takes the oath. But that's pretty remarkable. So think about the crazy things our government does. Like they're concerned about Trump and him being some kind of dictator. Trump wasn't the one who prosecuted a journalist. That was Kamala Harris, David Daleiden, while she was in California. Look it up, okay? So Trump isn't the one who prosecuted a journalist. Trump isn't the one who said, like he'll say stuff like, I think it shouldn't be legal to burn an American flag. And you're like, no, you got to still have free speech. But I get what you mean. I mean, you're passionate. You're wrong about this. And I would like to agree with you, but you just have to allow people to be able to do bad things like that, or that it's unpatriotic or whatever. But Kamala Harris is the one who wanted social media companies to have all this government oversight so they can limit what you say on the internet if they deem it to be hate speech, or they deem it to be you know, misinformation or whatever, even though her campaign engaged in so much misinformation, right? So if you talk about going after your political opponents, that's what the Biden-Harris administration has been doing. You know, jailing pro-life protesters, or just going after Trump. Democrats trying to kick him off the ballot, or bragging about how he's a felon, when everyone knows that that conviction with Bragg is just stupid. It's stupid and it's silly and it should be overturned. And they tried to bankrupt him with the fraud case, you know, saying that he overestimated his properties or whatever. But there's no one was harmed in the case or whatever. And then they really undervalued Trump's property and stuff too. And when it got to the appellate court, like the higher courts or whatever, they're like, what? Has anyone even brought a case like this before? This, you know, it was crazy. And so the lawyers of the state are now like fearing that they're going to get, you know, sanctioned or disbarred or something because the case is so ridiculous. So a lot of people have come after Trump, and it just looks like political prosecution. When Trump had his opportunity to go after Hillary Clinton, he immediately was like, no, we're not going to do that. Sometimes we'll say, I never said lock her up or whatever. I don't know if he's ever said it. I can't think of him maybe saying that. I'm not saying he hasn't, but that was something that people said a lot in his rallies, and he entertained it or whatever. But there was a time eventually where after he had won, that he's like, that's enough, guys. We're going to shut that down. Like, that's one thing while we were running, but now let's let it go. He wanted to let that go because he thought it was good for the country. I'm sure that's why he's floated, you know, that he would pardon Hunter Biden, you know, just for the good of the country or whatever. You know, I'm not saying Hunter deserves it, but I guess he'll do whatever he's going to do. But Trump hasn't displayed as president that he's going to do the awful things that they think he's going to do. The craziest thing is 100% like January 6th. Though that was, he didn't tell people to go to the Capitol and attack folks. He said march peacefully. He was definitely trying to pressure people to send it back to the states. They were definitely doing that, but that was intimidation as far as like, you know, the way that just the power of the voters normally have. Like they will vote you out. They'll do this, like, you know. But it wasn't like go there and break some kneecaps. It wasn't like that. He didn't tell people to come armed to do anything like that. It was definitely a riot. He wanted more people to come to National Guard to be there because he's like, that's a lot of people. Should he have maybe said something sooner? He did tell people to go. Sure, he did tell people to go home. I'm not gonna sit and defend January 6th a lot. I didn't think it was a good idea to go. To me, it always kind of seemed like a setup. And you know, there's all kind of questions or whatever surrounding that day, but there was obviously some bad behavior by a lot of different folks. But that's genuinely not going to be an issue because he's going to be leaving once he's done with the 4 years he's lame duck president. He's gonna go. So like that, Ben Shapiro pointed that out, like, well, if you're that concerned, if he wins the presidency, you're definitely not going to see a January 6th, and he doesn't have the capability of doing that because he's not the president anyway. So it's not a fear that's going to materialize one way or another. I was very concerned about Kamala Harris. I've already mentioned violations of First Amendment rights. You know, she's violations of the Second Amendment. She argued that we didn't have a private right for firearms and has tried to ban handguns and stuff. So, you know, you can't say what you're supposed, what you want to say. That freedom has gone to her, and you can't defend your rights because I mean that's what the Second Amendment is for, right? In case your government, you know, gets to thinking a little too bigly of itself, you know. She doesn't want you to be able to do that. So the list goes on from there. So we should be concerned about either two of them. Let's say both are poison. Let's say Trump and Kamala are both poison. We have survived the poison of Donald Trump. We've survived that. Okay. We have experience with that. There was somebody in his comments that said, oh, we already experienced Trump and it was awful. It was terrible. And I started reading through their comments to see why they thought that was the case. And they're like, his Supreme Court's justices were so terrible. I'm like, his Supreme Court picks were pretty good. Like, what kind of person is this? And I clicked on their profile, and they look like a trans woman. I was incompetent, but then they had like all this like rainbow stuff, and I'm like, okay, okay. I don't know if we're breaking that spell. I don't know. I don't know about that. So, yeah, let's finish watching this out again.
And that's what I want to understand. I'm not looking for people to flood my comments with the left has been fear-mongering. I understand people feel that way. What I'm trying to understand is why? Why do people think that this is not a credible threat? I want to understand what it is that goes through your head.
It just seems like there's presupposition here, and I guess obviously there is, but they're like, I don't want to hear the fear-mongering stuff. I want to know why you think that these things that we say aren't things to be afraid of. It's like, because you're just wrong. You're just wrong, bro. You're just wrong on the face of the facts. You're just wrong. You're just wrong.
Head when you hear him talk about things like lining someone up in front of a firing squad, or the enemy within that needs to be eradicated, or removing checks and balances against his power.
So, okay. I thought the scariest thing, we've had this conversation a lot, Kamala Harris having really no checks and balances, because you've seen the Biden administration defy the Supreme Court to brag about it, like with student loans and other stuff like that. They wanted to, she was open to packing the courts. They want to do court reform because they don't like the conservative majority. You know, no doubt that they'd want to probably, if Clarence Thomas and Alito didn't pass away within her term, I'm sure they would have tried to impeach them and kick them off, if not just pack the courts or whatever. They wanted to break the filibuster. The media was covering for them. They covered Joe Biden. Like you guys don't think that that's an issue that they covered for Joe Biden and then just like pushed him out when they didn't feel that he could win anymore, and then they still want to pretend like it's all good, and they told you the things that you were saying were cheap fakes, even though the people who ran the charity and like George Clooney and them later after the debate was like, okay, I'm writing this letter to let you guys know that actually things are pretty bad. Like the way that they covered that stuff, like where's the checks and balances there? Where's the checks and balances there? Because if we know anything about Donald Trump, is that he's had a lot of checks and balances on him. He's had a lot of checks and balances on him, guys. He's been impeached twice, unsuccessfully, right? He's been impeached twice for non-crimes. For non-crimes. So if anyone they're willing to hold accountable, it's him. And the voters will often stick up for him because they see that they come at him unfairly. So then they just get indignant. And maybe they defend him in times when maybe they shouldn't. But the reason why they are so defensive is because you pick on him unnecessarily. So that's why people stand for him, because they feel that they don't really hate him. They hate what he represents or who he's trying to protect. And that's the American people, or a lot of conservative people on the right or whatever, or just common sense people. They feel like it's not even a personal grudge against him. Their real animosity is aimed toward the American people. So they'll defend him because they feel like he's taken an actual bullet for them, the slings and the arrows and all that stuff. And when that actually happens, when that literally happens, what did he do? He stood up and said, fight, 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 fight. So it's just really that simple. So he mentioned the checks and balances things, and I don't know what he's aware of, like Trump having like no checks and balances or whatever, but I thought some of the arguments he made for like total like immunity wasn't accurate and we're kind of wild. But even when they say about the Supreme Court ruling with the president gets immunity, of course presidents have legal immunity for things that are related to their job. And that's why Joe Biden did not go to jail for droning some kids in Afghanistan, or Obama droning a wedding. Like, so of course there's some immunity there, and the Supreme Court pointing out the obvious doesn't make Trump some kind of dictator. There's tons of checks and balances when it comes to Donald Trump. The media 100% loves their job of fact checking Donald Trump. They didn't seem to love it too much with Biden, and they did not give him the same energy that was owed and necessary for Biden. I could not believe the way that the media tried to cover up his garbage comment and the White House transcript got like changed and stuff to cover that up. Like, you said what you said, just get over it, but they will sell their dignity, man. They will sell their dignity. Trump has checks and balances. Biden Harris didn't have proper checks and balances. They didn't. And that's why people thought Trump was a better person to go with. Just how it is. Now let's talk about this Liz Cheney comment that he made about the firing squad, because that's what he's referencing. So let's go ahead and go to another video. That he made. Okay, give me 1 second. Again, somebody in his comments mentioned, hey, like, you should look at the actual context of that video. And he reveals that he actually has seen the full video. And his interpretation of the video is what was pretty wild, and why I wanted to share it with you guys.
If Donald Trump wanted to be an authoritarian, why didn't he do it his first term? I understand where you're coming from with this question. I genuinely do. I think it's a sincere question. I want to talk about it. But first, I want to say thank you to everyone that has commented on that last video. I've gotten over 12,000 comments. It's been very helpful. I'm still working through them, but I want to start with this one because I've gotten this on many of my other videos.
I'm sorry. That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. I guess we can watch it while he talks though, but that's the wrong video.
And here's how I am thinking about this. One, Historically, it takes authoritarians anywhere from 3 to 6 years to take hold of a government.
Okay.
Because there's only so fast that you can take over individual aspects to where you are able to seize total control. Second, our Constitution specifically was designed to fight off abuses of power because we were escaping tyranny. So centrally baked into our founding documents, our Constitution is trying to implement checks and balances to fight off authoritarianism every step of the way. And that's how I tend to view this, is that it's just something that is going to take a while. It is something that is going to take longer than one term.
That's wild to me. Okay. Okay. That's all right then. So Trump didn't, what did he do though? In his first term that warrants that fear. What did he do? Did he just, I can understand if you're like, oh, we did a lot of crap to him. I'm afraid what he, they treated him very wrong and they raided Mar-a-Lago and they did all this awful stuff. And now he might be just coming back with a vengeance. I can understand if you're afraid that he's turned to the dark side or whatever. And he's just flipped a switch and he's just going to go like burn it all to the ground. And not that a lot of it doesn't need to be burned in some degree after all the things that were done to Donald Trump. Okay. But to just be like, well, he just didn't have enough time to be evil the first time around. That is a reach, I think. Yes, someone mentioned the Twitter files. The Twitter files. The way that the government was pressuring, bullying, working with these social media companies to limit and suppress speech, especially around COVID stuff. Which I think the person that he wanted over, I think it was a CDC, one of Trump's nominations was a critic of a lot of stuff that happened during COVID and stuff, and they suppressed him on speech and stuff. And he was one of the people who supported the Great Barrington Declaration, which I supported the Great Barrington Declaration. And I felt really validated because I'm like, if we slow the spread, aren't we just prolonging the virus? Like, this doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense. Shouldn't we just like, if it's really just impacting people with comorbidities and the super elderly, shouldn't we just try to protect those people as much as possible and resume life and not destroy our entire economy? Those were thoughts going in my head. And then there was a Great Barrington Declaration of all these, professionals that got together and said the same thing. Like, thank you. I'm making sense. And then you had Fauci and other folks, try to like kill that because they didn't want any opposition to their lockdown agenda. But yeah, I don't understand why people are so concerned about Trump, but they weren't that concerned about Kamala Harris. Like if you're on the left, like Elon, you think Trump is just like Elon's, like if he could make a candidate in his head in a lab or something, it wouldn't be Donald Trump. I don't think so. Like, I think there's things that Trump surprised and impressed people, like after he got shot, the fight, thing. Cause that's something you can't really teach, it's just like in you. So, and in the primary, he's pro DeSantis, and he was willing to do a live with like Trump and stuff, but at least if I'm not misremembering, I'm pretty sure he was kind of leaning more toward DeSantis or whatever. And so it's not like you see them all like buddy or whatever, but he said that he voted for Biden last time. They pushed this man over the edge, which by the way, they came after Elon too. They came after his company because they're saying he's not hiring enough, I think, refugees. And Tesla, they do like government contract stuff, so the security is really advanced or whatever. So you can't just hire non-citizens for stuff, but they're still coming for him for what, hiring Americans. So and there's other ways that they've come after Elon and stuff too. So there's a reason why folks are rallying around Trump rather than Kamala Harris. But if you're rallying around her and defending, like, why did they support him over her? You just don't know that much about her, or you don't know that much about the Biden-Harris administration. You just haven't been paying attention. Why would you want to support them after they conspired with the National School Board Association to make a letter to send to the Attorney General requesting that the Patriot Act be used on these parents going to these school board meetings concerned about their kids, in the really gross books, explicit books, and the boys in the girls' bathroom? The Patriot Act. And our Attorney General, his evidence for saying something, doing something, launching an investigation was the letter. So that was a huge scandal. So I'm just floored. I'm floored that people would even entertain I shouldn't say entertain. Everybody should think about it, right? Everybody should think about it, make a logical decision. But Biden and Kamala are obviously worse. Again, we've experienced Trump. You can be concerned about where he may go. I think everybody should be a little concerned about a lame duck president because they don't have the same kind of pressure for reelection that everybody else does, right? But the Biden-Harris administration had so many issues. And maybe people were living in a bubble or whatever. But there were so many issues, including on our liberties and our freedoms. But Kamala Harris, beyond her being the vice president, she has a record. She has rhetoric. And not he said, she said, stuff that she has said that has come out of her mouth proudly, boastfully, and things she has actually done. People she's actually charged, gone after. Why the heck are you more afraid of Donald Trump? He didn't go to these different cities and just have the National Guard pick up every single protester during BLM, even though they were burning the country, whatever. They went like on federal property, so he did what he could in areas that he had that authority, and he wanted to do more, but he didn't want the press like coming at him. He didn't take Tom Cotton's advice and just do martial law and he didn't do that. He could have, but he didn't because he didn't want guys like that saying like, oh, he's a fascist and it still doesn't matter to these people. It doesn't matter that he didn't prosecute Hillary Clinton. It doesn't matter to these people. They're still into the propaganda. So this should be the right video that I'm about to show you guys. So I'm glad we hold on. But I am glad we watched that other one too, because that one was silly. Oh. Give me 1 second as I share my screen. He seems like a nice guy, though. Trying to understand. Let's see if we can this video is way too long to put on TikTok now, so I'll have to make it a video. But let's go.
Trump said that he was going to put Liz Cheney in front of a firing squad. No, that is not exactly what he said. I was speaking from my interpretation of what he is saying, and I want to explain. I did watch that video.
So someone said, hey, that Liz Cheney, the firing squad comment, that's not what Trump said. Like, why don't you look that up? And he's like, oh, I put my foot in the mouth. Oh, because I'm talking about my interpretation of what he said. What? So it's your feelings about not what he actually said. So now you spread, and he apologized for spreading misinformation or a lie or whatever. to his audience, and again, he has almost 800,000 followers, and he used that one thing on top of another thing to come after Trump and to paint a picture to make a case against him. And he's put that out there, the firing squad comment, and he knows where it's actually from. He knows what Trump actually said. He knows. But he's still choosing to say what he said and explain it the way that he did. And he's saying he's going to do better, but he said it the way that he said because that's his interpretation of the events, not what actually happened, his interpretation of events. Okay.
Video. I had seen it. I think that oftentimes when I hear people defending Donald Trump, or they're saying that the thing that he said actually isn't that bad, they are simply focused on that clip or the context of the speech or the interview that he was giving at the time.
The context is important. Yeah,
it is
sure.
important. We should be looking at context. Everyone should care about context. But I think my interpretation of context, or what is relevant context, is a little different. When you look at abusive behavior, oftentimes it is not something that you can put like a finite point on. You can say this is a clear example of how they're an abusive person. It's usually confusing. And oftentimes what you're looking for is a pattern of behavior, trends. And Trump does this thing where he will say something out of pocket to see how people react or to see if someone will do something on his behalf. And lately he's increasingly been saying
that is speculation. You don't know that. People act like Trump said stuff and did stuff that led to, I mean, Democrats would say Republicans, they're taking away your health care, they're killing your grandma, right? They're killing people because of health care. And what happened? Crazy person tried to assassinate Republicans at a congressional baseball practice. It was a Bernie supporter or whatever. I'm not saying it's Bernie Sanders' fault, but that's the rhetoric that was coming from the Democrats, okay? And it led to crazy Democrat trying to kill Republicans. Rand Paul said the person who was shooting was like, this is for health care. No question about why he was there doing what he did. And by the way, the government tried to not label that as a domestic terror incident or whatever at first, which was insane. So, and the reason why no one died is because Steve Scalise was there and he had Capitol Police that were like following him around, and he almost died. But there were different, a couple Republicans from Michigan who were there that day who could have died. So I knew a few people who could have been assassinated that day. So this idea that Trump says things to see if anyone's going to that will act on it, like what kidnap Liz Cheney and put her in front of a firing squad. That's what's going through your mind. This is a really uncharitable interpretation of what he said, and he said that there's a pattern. Have you ever considered that there is no pattern, and you just have a misinterpretation of several events to build your case off of? Have you considered that? Have you considered that? Let's finish watching this because I got some more commentary.
Saying things where he is putting someone that he disagrees with in a violent situation. And if you look at the individual clip, is he saying that he wants to commit violence against them? No, usually not. But it is still creating this pattern of talking about people that he doesn't like being in violent situations. It is not fair for me to put words into someone else's mouth.
Oh, really?
I'm never trying to say that this is what Donald Trump means. But from my perspective, if you speak in a way that is coded or left up to interpretation, at some point, we do have to interpret what you're saying. And that's not on us. That's because you're speaking in a way that requires interpretation. And when we start to interpret it in different ways, it can look like we are being disingenuous or like we are misinformed or we are relying on the sound bites. So I totally understand why there can be a disconnect on this. And I apologize. I should have said exactly what he said about her being in front of 9 barrels. That's something that I will make note of for the future and do better.
My sister has a great comment. She said, from my perspective, the Jedi are evil. I think you said point of view, but exactly, I love that scene in Revenge of the Sith, because because Obi-Wan is trying to reason with him, and he's just like, Anakin. I guess I feel this way too, Kamala, because I've seen people say stuff like, "I don't know why the Lord has us going through like this right now," and I'm going to say, Anakin, Chancellor Palpatine is evil. And then they're just like, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. And then he just screams, well, then you are lost. Then you are lost. His words weren't coded. Like, was there room for that people can interpret it? We can interpret what he said all kinds of ways, though I think it was pretty clear. But what Trump said was clear. You have to have these presuppositions and then choose to make an unfavorable interpretation of what he said to get to where they're at. If you haven't seen that clip, I'm sure you guys have. Let me go ahead and pull it up for the Liz Cheney stuff. It's just wild. It wasn't coded. It wasn't coded. Now this person here has a tweet where they showed different headlines, and these headlines were so uncharitable to Trump. They were lies, and Liz Cheney was smart enough to know what Trump was saying, and she's like, "Oh, he's calling for my assassination and stuff." And what were the headlines from CNN? Trump says Liz Cheney might not be such a war hawk if she had rifles shooting at her. Trump says that war hawk Liz Cheney should be fired upon an escalation of violent Trump rhetoric. AP's was kind of accurate. CNN's was just like, wow. Trump says Liz Cheney might not be such a PBS was kind of accurate, but the way that they still write it is so inflammatory. The 19th News, Trump suggests Liz Cheney should be shot. Okay. And so these are the headlines people see. A lot of people don't read articles. A lot of people don't look for the context and go look at other stuff. But we know that this guy did actually look at the context and listen to the clip. So here we go.
And Cheney was so, he said, I really want to thank you. He said, now I'm so glad that I actually endorsed you. It's amazing, but that you would do this. And I didn't speak to him about it. But then, go a couple of years forward or go now. And I don't blame him for sticking with his daughter, but his daughter is a very dumb individual, very dumb. She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. When the guns are trained on her face. They're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy. But she's a stupid person. And I used to I'd have meetings with a lot of people, and she always wanted to go to war with people. And
so that's the clip, and the full context there. The interpretation is clear, and he can say, well, there's a pattern of abuse when you put violent people in violent situations. His point, Donald Trump does not spend all this time thinking about how stuff is going to go off and sound and whatever, and how people might be taking stuff out of context for days. I think most polished politicians would try to not kind of use rhetoric like that. However, it's called the chicken hawk argument. It's pretty famous. That's a criticism that people have had for a long time, including about Dick Cheney and other folks, that these people are so gung-ho about sending people to war, but they themselves probably would not express the same kind of courage in those situations. And how would they feel if they were being sent to die? How would they feel about that if they had that skin in the game, if it was their life on the line? How would they be so ready to send people to war if they were at risk of dying? That is the entire point, and that is what matters. That is what matters, is that he said what he said, and that's the interpretation of it. Why leave out that context that and say like talk about the having the rifles pointed at or whatever to build it with other stuff to make your case that he's some kind of tyrant in the making who just didn't do anything before because he didn't have the time. Why? Because you believe something and now you're proof texting. When you're proof texting, like if you have something that a subject that you're studying or trying to prove in the Bible or something like that, maybe you'll just search for certain verses out of context. And you're like, okay, this scripture is about money. This scripture is about that. This scripture is about that. Like I'll give you an example. There's a passage in the book of Job that says, if you obey and serve him, you shall spend your days in prosperity and your years of pleasure. If you proof text that, you're like, prosperity this. Oh yeah. If you obey God, then you're going to get all this money, right? That's what the Bible says. That's my proof right there. Ooh. And if you actually look at that scripture in context, his friends were talking. That wasn't Job declaring prosperity. That wasn't God giving him some kind of decree. That was his friends talking to him after all this tragedy befell Job. And their point of view was, you must have done something wrong, because if you're good, then you get to have a good life. So they weren't saying, oh God, name it, claim it, blessings, blessings, blessings. They were saying, why are you poor, Job? Why are you poor? You must suck. That's what that verse means. So proof texting. So what these people are doing is that they look for little statements here or there to build their case, but they just throw out the context of what's actually going on so they can make their sermon about Trump instead of being fair to their audience, fair to the American people, fair to Trump, or fair to themselves, because now they're afraid and they're terrified and they're confused. Because he used words like scary and stuff. So they're scared and they're very confused because they don't understand the rest of the country, because they've built this very creepy looking straw man with a pumpkin head, orange head, or whatever. He said what he said. There's a reason why you don't want to present what he said. And again, he apologized for what he said, but he's still defending his interpretation of it, saying, well, when you say things and you leave, interpretation for it, room for interpretation, I guess it's kind of your fault. It's also kind of like atheists will say stuff about like stuff in the Bible, and they'll argue like, well, I guess God should have made it more clear, and they'll say it about stuff that's like radically clear. Whether it's like stuff on like, I don't know, same-sex relations or other stuff like that, they'll be like, well, good, I guess we need to make it clear. Like, no, there's plenty. You just don't want to see it. Okay. So, bro. So I'll respond to him on TikTok. I'm sure it'll still be a long video, but it's obviously not going to be like an hour long, like we're having this conversation. But I want to tell you guys this, because he said that there's a pattern. There is a pattern, but the pattern is the media taking him consistently out of context and people being deranged. Back in 2016, I don't know if you guys remember that. If you guys remember this, let me know in the chat. In 2016, Hillary Clinton was getting a bad reputation for being anti-gun. And that's because she had floated the idea of like, I think someone had asked her about mandatory buybacks. Like, do you like the idea of what Australia did with mandatory buybacks? And she was open to that. So that was alarm bells, ding, 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 ding. But also she said that the ruling in DC versus Heller was wrong. And she disagreed with it. DC versus Heller, the radicals were trying to argue that there is the Second Amendment is only for militia related purposes, and you don't actually have a private right to own a firearm, because DC was trying to ban handguns. Kamala Harris actually signed the amicus brief to it, so she obviously agreed that you don't have a constitutional right to privately own firearms. So another issue there. So there are reasons to be like, Hillary, you are a threat to our Second Amendment here. And so Donald Trump made some kind of comment about her negative view of firearms. I don't remember exactly what it was, the whole context of the conversation, but he said something along the lines of, if she doesn't like the guns, then maybe she shouldn't have Secret Service be armed. It was something along those lines. And the media responded to that criticism saying he wants her to be shot and killed. Like, he wants Hillary Clinton to die. I'm not joking. Like, if you remember that, just let me know. But it was so baffling. And I remember memes about it and other stuff like that. There was a meme that somebody made with a father and a kid having a conversation, and the kid said something like, well, why don't you get rid of the guns? And he's just like, you want me to die? So if you remember that, let me know. But that was in 2016. That was just another way that they tried to take something that Trump said, which was a commonsensical thing, and they tried to turn it into something so radical. When the context was obviously, hey, why don't you live by your own ethic here? If you don't believe that the American people have the right to protect themselves, what right do you have to have this taxpayer funded force constantly have firearms and protect you? Why are you more privileged than the American people? Like, you're the former senator, former wife of the president of the United States and stuff. We understand why you have Secret Service. You're a higher profile person, your life's at risk or whatever. Like, it's fine that you have the Secret Service, but you're protected. The single mom who's got kids that she needs to protect, she needs to have a firearm. The woman on college, probably gonna have a college campus, but let's say she's 21 and she's living on her own or something. She would like something to protect herself. Like, why doesn't she get to do that, but you get to be armed to the teeth with this force around you at all times? So, that's just how the media has been. So when they say that there's a pattern, the pattern is they lie. The pattern is they lie. Like, even this comment with the enemy within. So what? Like, I don't understand the reaction to it, the anger toward it, the fear about it. I expect, especially because the left has been calling us fascists and Nazis and racist and sexist and homophobic and bigots and all these buzzwords, all this stuff, making us obviously their enemy. I say something they don't like, I'm an Uncle Tom, I'm a Sambo, I'm a Candace Owens. It's interesting how they've turned her into a racial slur. They say all this stuff. And when someone says, we got to fight the enemy within, they're like, wait a second, hold up. That's, you're a dictator, man. When he was talking about different threats, and it's not like he didn't lay it out about the enemy within. When you have people who's trying to put you in jail for nonsense, the people who he mentioned enemy within, who set up like the Russia stuff. He said we have enemies, we have foreign enemies, but we also have enemies domestically, enemies within that are trying to ruin the country, and have done a lot of bad things, like the open borders. That's not a good thing. How are you an ally to America when you don't even want us to have borders anymore, when you're ready to let anyone in, knowing that there are terrorists coming through? Like, that's not a good thing. Like, you need to be defeated, not like shot or killed or something like that, but you need to be politically defeated. Why is it complicated to say that? When you have people in positions of power like Adam Schiff, who, by the way, he did win a Senate race, and he still does not regret his part on the Russia collusion stuff. He still feels he's justified in saying all the lies that he and leading all these people on about something that Trump did. He didn't collude with Russia. They never found that kind of evidence. And that was something that the Hillary campaign started, which, by the way, Barack Obama and Joe Biden knew that before the election was even over in 2016. Why isn't he an enemy within when they spent so much time trying to convince the American people that the president of the United States, who the people elected into power, that he was installed by a Russian president? Why is it not okay for Trump to call those people the enemy within? Why is it not okay to call the people the enemy within who keep pushing the fact that, well, they keep trying to say that he called neo-Nazis very fine people because they want Trump to be like the dead center representation of racism in America, when he denounced white supremacy, white nationalists, and neo-Nazis in the same press conference, they're in the same clip that they're using to say that he said they were fine people. The evidence is right there, but Obama and Kamala and Hillary Clinton, well, I don't know if Hillary, I'm sure she's probably said it, but Joe Biden, they went around lying about that stuff constantly trying to enrage and instill fear and shame within the American people about the person who's the president of the United States. Why isn't it okay to call those people the enemy within? Because they are trying to destroy the United States from within the inside, so they can pick up the pieces, the rubble, and they can go ahead and take power and lead. They're not thinking about what's overall good for the country. You cannot like Donald Trump, debate him on policy, but to try to convince people that he's a Russian stooge and to try to usurp his presidency in that kind of way is insane. And I don't think that Trump is some kind of dictator in the making because he called them the enemy within. And even when they said, oh, he talked about using like the National Guard of people against the enemies, no, he talked about using them for like they're a protest or whatever, which there were riots in his inauguration. I know, I was there. I hope everyone's on their best behavior and nothing crazy breaks out. I hope to God that nothing bad happens. But people set a limousine on fire. They were busting up windows, all kinds of stuff, and they were attacking people in line for the ball. I know, because I was there. So I'm sorry, I just don't see the big deal. Especially after all the rhetoric that the left has been using all this time. To think that he's the problem is laughable. I'm not saying he's the best behaved person. I'm not saying he's the best person for the job, but out of the two, he was. Out of the two, absolutely. To be so concerned about him and grieved that Kamala lost is insane. It's insane. It's insane. Anyway, I'm really over. and I didn't get a chance to talk about this Pennsylvania situation, but let me quickly go through this statement from Josh Shapiro. I will say hello to, I see I got a first timer watching me live. Thank you again. Thank you to everybody who's watching me live right now. Thank you to those who watch me back later. Thank you. And thank you to everyone in the chat communicating with each other. I know there's people communicating on Facebook and you guys can't see the YouTube people and so on, but I see you guys and I appreciate you. Someone said they're gonna check out my books. I hope you do. Thank you for your interest. So in Pennsylvania, they are straight up trying to steal the Pennsylvania Senate seat. And Bob Casey, for a while, would not concede the race to McCormick. He wouldn't concede for a while. And Chuck Schumer didn't even want to allow McCormick to even come to the orientation for the newly elected people. And he eventually relented, but at first he was like, "No, we're contesting it. It's contested right now, so we're not just let you come." Even though it had been called, decision desk had been called, other people had been called. They didn't care. But they're trying to steal it. So, but I think it's Buck County decided to just defy Supreme Court orders, and they're counting ballots that they shouldn't be counting. And they know that they're doing that, and they talked about it on video, and that they wanted to defy the law to prove a point or whatever, but they're still counting ballots, and they're decreasing the lead, and they're trying to overturn the results of an election. Now, by the way, if we should not still be counting ballots by now. Like, we should. The election was on the, what was it, the 5th? Oh, like, what is wrong, guys? Like, if there's still like, I don't even, should military ballots even be out this long? Like, whatever you guys are doing, it's just too long. It's too long at this point. And the longer it goes and the more ballots show up, people, especially when you start overturning results or whatever, they get suspicious, especially since we know that they are literally trying to overturn an election. So there was another ruling that just reiterated a earlier ruling that they weren't supposed to do this. And so there was a statement from Josh Shapiro. As I have made clear for years, every eligible Pennsylvanian's vote should be counted in every race. And thanks to the hard work of the Republican and Democratic election officials all across the Commonwealth, Pennsylvania has held another free, fair, safe, and secure election. As counties continued counting ballots from the 2024 general election and a mandatory statewide recount begins in the U.S. Senate race, they were confronted with a lack of legal clarity surrounding undated mail-in ballots that caused significant confusion to put counties in challenging legal position. Both my predecessor and I have repeatedly called on lawmakers to deliver greater clarity on mail-in voting, and due to certain legislative actors refusing to act on critical election reforms, this issue has been left to the courts. Oh, it's everybody else's fault. They're openly defying the courts. Openly defying the courts, and he just decides to do blame game and talks about confusion and blah blah blah. Given the lack of clarity, there's no lack of clarity. There's no look. Sorry, I'm getting tongue tied. There is no lack of clarity, Josh. There's none. County officials in each of our 67 counties were damned if they did and damned if they didn't. Oh, they decided to be damned, all right, likely facing legal action no matter which decision they made on counting. Yeah, friggin' right. The Department of State had advised counties repeatedly of their duty to segregate challenge provisional ballots and undated ballots in anticipation of a ruling by the court. The court has now ruled on the counting of these ballots specific to the November 5th, 2024 election, and I expect all county election officials to adhere to this ruling and all the applicable laws governing our elections. As we move forward, I want to be clear. Any insinuation that our laws can be ignored or do not matter is irresponsible and does damage to faith in our electoral process. The rule of law matters in this Commonwealth. And as I have always said, it is critical for counties and officials in both parties to respect it with both their rhetoric and their actions. As governor, I will continue working to protect our democracy and the votes of all eligible Pennsylvanians, and we continue to have free, fair, safe, secure elections in our Commonwealth. Bro, you should have just came out hard and said the law should not be defied. The courts made their ruling. There are bad actors and making a decision that's leading to people questioning the results of the election, to questioning and having faith in our electoral process, and we cannot have that. We cannot have that. You should have came out really strong. I like to see other Democrats come out really strong against these people who have defied the courts and they're going to count illegal ballots and who do not care. But saying, well, this is lawmakers and there's a lot of confusion. It's so dishonest, Josh. It's so dishonest. They bragged about breaking the law. It's just shameful. And just so you know, Josh Shapiro, there's people who view him as a moderate. Some people have said he's the next Obama. I don't think they have a next Obama anywhere on their roster. But he is a future prospective person who's in the running to be president one day, put his hat out there. You know, he's got a bright political future. I think he'd do himself a lot of favors if he just cut out the nonsense. Just cut out the nonsense. Anyway, I'm going to have to call it a quits there because we are about an hour and a half into the day, into the night. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Thank you, the Pretty Pundit. I'm glad that you enjoyed the show. And everybody else who's in the chat and watching live, and those who passed in and passed back and will come back later. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. I'm about to drop an article. I don't know if I'll be able to post it tonight, if not in the morning, but just things that we've already talked about, but a bit of an autopsy of, I keep telling you guys, I keep seeing videos of Democrats trying to explain why they lost and are so off the mark. Which, by the way, Sonny Hostin on The View is still going with racism, sexism, misogyny. It's so funny. And I just, explain all these kinds of things, reasons why Kamala lost. She was a very bad candidate as far as her retail politics. Her actual record was problematic. She didn't distinguish herself enough from Biden. And Biden, as soon as he started spending a lot, Inflation Reduction Act, American Rescue Plan, and all that stuff, it really started laying the groundwork for the economy not being very good at inflation. And, so he doomed his presidency pretty early. And, Kamala Harris is always going to be the nominee as soon as he made her vice president. That's just the reality of the situation, because Democrats are a slave to their own woke ideology, and they could not just replace her or pass her up with someone white. You just couldn't do it because they're a slave to their mentality. It's not even just the fact that she's the vice president, but he made her the vice president and she's a woman of color. People would not have gone along with it, And Newsom, was asked like, hey, are you going to run for president? And I didn't take him seriously. I'm like, I know this guy wants to be president, but he would just say, Kamala Harris is the heir apparent, which must have killed him because Gavin Newsom knows some information that he absolutely knows enough stuff to destroy her, man. He absolutely knows enough stuff. But anyway, I'm going to be dropping that article soon. So make sure that you guys, leave your emails on the website, so you guys are getting notifications when I send out emails. I do not send out a lot of emails. I do not send out enough emails. So if you're worried about that, you're just being bombarded, I will not bombard you. I absolutely promise you. You guys can check out also different merch that's available at blacktnews.com, like the I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For shirt. Also, I got the Slay Your Fear, How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear. That's one of my nonfiction books. And I've got, fiction books like The Color of God's Eyes, and it's Christmas time. You guys get your kids some good books. We got Super Kid and Super Kid 2 available, so go ahead and check that out and other stuff. There's a link in the description that should take you over to my Amazon page, so if you want to check that stuff out, go ahead. Anyway, thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your night.